Are you ready to connect with nature in a whole new way? Welcome to The Green Scene, your guide to a greener, healthier world. Join Green Corridors Andiswet Dlamini, Duncan Pritchard and Charlene Versveld to explore the wonders of nature and find out how we can live more sustainably and take small actions at home and work to make a big impact.
Hello, Sanbonani. My name is Andiswa. Some may say Susan, whichever one is good for you. I come from Green Corridors, which is a non-profit organization based here in Durban. We are supported by a unit called Economic Development within the eThekwini municipality. Our job is to co-create, work together with the people, connecting them to the planet. I'm the tourism coordinator based here at the Green Hub. Today I'm joined by Duncan Pritchard and Gogo Charlene Versveld. Today we'll be discussing biodiversity. So guys, tell me more about yourself. We'll start with Duncan.
How's it, Susan? Yeah, nice to be here. I'm Duncan Pritchard. I'm an ecologist by trade, specialise in climate change, carbon footprint management, but a lot of the work I do with Green Corridors is around developing ecotourism in some of the, really wild, beautiful places up the Umgeni River. And, a lot of that's got to do with adding value, economic value to the incredible natural resources we got in our city.
Yeah, and I'm, as you introduced me, Charlene Versveld, I'm a communications consultant working with Green Corridors, but I'm also a nature guide. Really, I'm a qualified nature guide, and I am also a nature enthusiast, and I do a lot of traveling. So yeah, my interest is in how we live with nature and how we connect with nature and that kind of stuff. So it's great to be here. Thanks.
Wow. Gogo, you're a nature guide. I didn't know that about you. So guys, what are your hopes for this podcast and what are you hoping to achieve and get everyone in Durban buzzing about it?
For me, I'm very aware that I am not an expert, that I'm passionate. And for me, it's about how we have conversations with people that is not highbrow. It's down to earth. Let's talk about what we experience so other people can relate to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just the idea that things aren't coming to get you. Animals aren't coming to get you, or insects aren't coming to get you, but they're an important part of our lives and a part of the general biodiversity of the place. So for me, it's about down-to-earth conversations that can help people cut through clutter of climate change, environment, conservation, all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Duncan, let's hear from you. Mr.
Yeah,
D.
that's an interesting question. I think for me it's quite, I simply just want people to be more aware and appreciative of what they've got around them, especially in Durban. We live in a city that's got remarkable things. I was driving up the M4 the other day and I saw a whale breaching out the water at 100 kilometers an hour. Yeah. I've been for a walk the other day and I saw it's a random thing, a spotted ground thrush. But I mean, this is a bird that there's probably less than a few hundred left on the entire planet.
Sure.
We've got this amazing stuff around us. And I think if I really believe that if you start becoming aware of it and somehow connect to it and just aware of the value that we get as humans from nature, there's a direct benefit to us from that.
Perfect. I'm just trying to understand nature. That's the basics of it. Understand nature. Duncan, today we are going to be speaking about biodiversity, but there's something that you spoke about, and you mentioned Umgeni River, you mentioned ecotourism. I mean, for an average person sitting at home, how do we connect the two? What is ecotourism? Maybe just to start off explaining that, because people think tourism is just tourism, but then there are different fields of tourism, and how does that fall into Umgeni River? Placing that together, I think it's going to nicely slide in with the biodiversity conversation.
There's a lot of definitions for ecotourism, but ecotourism in a very broad context is defined as tourism that actually has a direct benefit for nature and people living around natural areas. So that's an important distinction from something like nature-based tourism where you could go and experience nature, but there's no benefit for nature from it. So that's a lot of the work that we do is adding value to this incredible biodiversity and these ecosystems that we've got. When people can see a beautiful patch of forest and you're working as a guide and generating income, taking people on walks to see birds or whatever that activity is, you start having there's a big incentive to actually conserve it, and you start to integrate people's social economic needs and the environmental needs.
How does that connect as well to the ecotourism? You spoke about economic benefits. How do we connect all of those things? What is biodiversity?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand why biodiversity is important. And you can't talk about biodiversity without talking about ecosystems. So a nice way to think of it is when you play Jenga. You familiar with Jenga? That little where you pile that up?
Yep.
The ecosystem is the pile of blocks. Biodiversity are the little plates that you pull out. So if we start losing biodiversity, that whole tower falls down. And in a city, in an environment where we live in, we are part of nature, whether we like it or not. We breathe the air, we drink the water, we use it for recreation. We are part of that ecosystem. So making sure all those blocks are staying in place and your tower is actually not really wobbly and about to fall over is actually quite an important thing. Beyond just the intrinsic value of nature,
you're talking about the connection of plants and animals and people.
Yes,
and how many there are.
And without that healthy ecosystem, we do not have healthy humans and healthy societies.
Okay.
Yeah, totally get it. On your side, you said, Charlene, you're a nature guide. How do you connect what is biodiversity?
Okay, so I have to confess, I am a qualified nature guide, but I really haven't worked professionally, but it sounds pretty good.
Sorry, I'm trying to imagine this short little lady as a nature guide leading a group.
And then she's not even wearing khakis.
Each time I look at you, I can see you in the little green hats, but it's just not happening.
Well, listen, I'm actually I'm also honorary Sandparks honorary ranger applicant. So once I've done my time, I'm going to have a uniform. So you better watch out.
Charlene in Veldskins. Nice.
Charlene in Veldskins and khaki, and I'm only doing it because I like the uniform. No, but seriously, for me, this conversation is around cutting through the clutter. I work a lot in environment conservation, tourism, also in arts and culture and film and that kind of stuff. And we see in those spaces where people are bringing in issues around climate change. I mean, you look at something like Empatheaters work, like Ulantle, which talks around the sea and the importance of the sea. They went to the United Nations. They spoke around climate change. They're trying to do stuff around environment through arts. Film's also trying to do that through film. But I'm interested in that nothing is landing. We're still in this incredibly dire situation. Scientists are doing things. We've got stats. We've got all kinds of stuff, but that people are trying to make change. But I'm interested in how we do it at home. I'm interested in how we do it. We cut through all of that stuff, and what are the practical things that we can do to kind of save the planet and connect people back to nature. That's where I come in. So I'm no expert, okay? I'm just passionate about the environment and how we connect with it, yeah.
Yeah, so you're the lady that has the spinach garden going in the background, the 3 burns, the red, the yellow, the black. So you the separator, you trying to be the evangelist and preaching the word of
you got loving
nature.
The spinach never grows. The tomatoes always get rust on it or something.
Yeah, she's even vegetarian at this stage now, trying to save the world. Yeah. South Africa is known as one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, following your Brazil and what. So for those who don't know, for me, when they speak demos, these are the green areas. So they recycle the oxygen within the city centers. So we need demos areas. So you would have your carbon dioxide being taken by these trees, which we are not allowed to touch, and then they get recycled and they bring back the oxygen. So we have a lot of these pockets in Durban. So this is what it looks like. Yeah. Now I'm going back to my geography teacher in high school.
Well, can you explain? I mean, DEMOS, I know it stands for something. What does it stand for?
I don't know. Then we asked Duncan there.
It stands for the Durban Metropolitan Open Space System.
Okay.
And again, this is something that conservation, they love acronyms and weird things. But all it basically means it's the green areas in our city that we actually look after and they're connected. So all of these they become little corridors for wildlife to move. And
so they're not for oxygen, Duncan. So my teacher lied to me.
No, oxygen is important. But I think if you took, there's a big misconception that if you took the oxygen, it's not even the right word, the carbon that's stored in the trees around Durban and compare it to what's in the ocean, you're not even making a comparison. So that's not the biggest deal. The threat is what we potentially lose without it. So if you think about the floods that we've had, the erosion and the land that we lose, that all happens the moment you don't have natural vegetation protecting your soil.
Yeah.
If you think there's not a medicine known to man that has not come from nature at some point. I mean, you would know, Susan, with traditional medicines work because a lot of them have got active ingredients that we use in modern medicines, and there's stuff we haven't even discovered or found yet. So there's this vast sink of potential in these open spaces that we haven't even touched yet. But there is an intrinsic value there too. There's the people go into nature and they feel different. There's a reason why your medical aid charges you less if you live at the coast or live in a, there's a reason. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Being close to nature, the research is very clear, the psychological benefits of it. You look at property prices in places that have got big green trees. We are so connected to these spaces, and I think our modern worlds disconnect us. But so it goes so much more than what we can get from it, and the ecosystem services we get from nature in terms of flood attenuation and providing oxygen and space for other animals to live. It's actually part of our psyche. It's so built into us.
And what I find interesting is that, I live in a river here in Durban, and I find it interesting. I have some relatives that come and freak out when a wasp comes down and over the lunch table, or a frog jumps onto the veranda. Just like, there's wildlife. And I go, well, we've lived with this stuff for millennia, and how is it that we've got so frightened of it? I've been to the Umfolozi Wilderness, and there's a brilliant guide with the Wilderness Leadership School called Maputaland-Pondoland-Albany.
Wait, that's the one where they don't use toilet paper?
No!
One day, Susan,
one day,
we'll
we're
get
going to
to
get to there.
Slowly but surely.
So and Mandla, when he goes into the wilderness, he always points out, he said, that's where my family used to live, there in the middle of Louis and Mfolozi there. And it always reminds me that we have lived with animals. We've lived with elephants, we've lived with lions, we've lived with giraffes and warthogs and honey badgers, and frogs and snakes, and as Duncan says, we're all connected, So if you pull one of these things out, if we pull the snakes out, we're going to have too many frogs, or we pull out the bats, we're going to have too many, mosquitoes or whatever it is. So it's how we try and get people's heads around connecting back to that stuff. So there is a purpose. When you see a snake, it's not coming to get you. It's not. The mosquito is poor mosquitoes. Just get a couple of bats in your house and it'll sort it out. But I'm just saying that these creatures are not normally coming out to get you. So how do we rebalance ourselves in this whole system?
It's a tough one with that one. I don't see myself living next door to an elephant or a lion or a mosquito. I've now this is a domestic child who was born here in Durban and then taken to Harding due to different circumstances, lived in a hut till I was 6 years old. My toilet was the wild, where there was no flushing toilet, where everything was wild, and then I got taken back to the city. Do I want to go back to that wild where I'm not using toilet paper? No. I don't want. I can't even light a fire. I'm fine with it. But at the same time, everyone in the city is trying to go back to the bushes, and I'm trying to go away from the bushes. So maybe that's where the thing is.
But I think it's that. If I can interrupt you there, Susan, it's that disconnect that's actually that we stopped understanding, because you still want to eat bread, which comes from wheat. You still want to buy fruit from the shops. Those mosquitoes, those flies, those wasps, those bees, those insects that are a pain up your butt. Provide a phenomenal service in terms of pollinating all of this food. None of that food grows by accident. It's got to be pollinated by an insect. So these little things that are irritations, they're actually serving a very, very important function that keeps us alive. We all hear about the bees, and bees pollinate, but most insects are pollinators. You lose that, you lose your food. And that's a brutal, whether you're living in the city or living in the bush. If you're living in the bush and growing your own food, you'll be very, very aware of the importance of it.
So basically it's all about changing our mindsets, and that becomes a bit of a difficult thing where you have very different mindsets and very different goals for people. Our country is very different. You've been exposed to your running water, your electricity your whole life. I've been telling you that I was raised in a little hut where I've had no running water, or I've had no concrete walls like you've had. For me, I'm going, I want that life, So how do we bring it, in such a way that it does look glorious from a person who has nothing, but also we who do have something, we have now seen the damage that we're doing to our environments as well. But how do we now change the mindsets of the kids that are growing up? You call them Mama 2000. They call Mama 2000, the new kids.
Gen Z.
Gen Z or something.
How do you explain that listen, we are now at a point where we are hurting Earth, and we need to start taking action. We need to protect our wildlife, protect our trees. We need to start living in such a way that this will survive for generations and generations. I feel that's a conversation that we should be having, but not taking away of wanting to have a good life or a better life.
Yeah. I get that completely, but I don't think this conversation is about going back, because we can't go back.
No.
I think it is about how we are cognizant of the ideas and the way that the earth works so that we don't harm it. How we can be more mindful, how we can teach our children to be more mindful. I watch my own children not consuming, say, as much as I did. I talk around how much Tupperware do you actually need in a cupboard. I had friends that have moved and you inherit like Tupperware. You've got a cupboard of 50 pieces of Tupperware which you would never use. I'm saying we just use so much stuff.
Charlene, what does Tupperware have to do with biodiversity?
No, I'm talking about the usage. I'm talking about how much we consume, how much we take in, how much we actually need when in the greater scheme of things. So it's about how much we are consuming and what we are doing with this modern life that we have.
Yeah, I think it's also got a lot to do with efficiency. There's this thing that we over consume, and one of the analogies I like to use is food. 30% of the world's population is hungry. 30% of our food gets wasted. We could actually solve that problem by just being more efficient. And I do believe that human ingenuity is very capable of this. If we try to find those solutions, by just being more cognizant and aware. But I think that's got to come back to us seeing ourselves as part of the system. When we move from a village into the city, suddenly we're city dwellers. We are still part of that system. We are so intrinsically reliant on a healthy ecosystem for our own survival. I don't think people really appreciate how important that is to literally our own survival.
Yeah, I mean, my personal belief is that people who have less are the ones who are doing the less damage to our nature system, to our biodiversity, as we've learned. What a long word, biodiversity. But those who are living on the edge of our cities, who have less resources, are actually less responsible for all the damages. But unfortunately, they're probably the most affected.
They're the most vulnerable,
they're most vulnerable. But we are now having a situation where what do we do? How do we repair it? And I think that's also a conversation for another day of how do we repair it? How do we bring it together to work together to repair what has happened? Charlene, I think also being the one that's most factual about us, our nature guide and applicant as well, can you give us maybe just like a few facts of when we say biodiversity and we say Durban is one of the leading or the most biodiverse city, what does it mean in factual numbers?
Right, okay. So this is not me as an expert, okay? I've learned this, okay? So Durban is located in the middle of one of these biodiverse hotspots, and it's called the Maputaland-Pondoland-Albany region, okay? You can Google this. And this includes terrestrial ecosystems like grasslands and forests, and aquatic ecosystems like rivers, oceans, estuaries, okay? In Durban, we have over 2,000 plant species, 82 terrestrial mammal species, 380 species of birds. There's 69 species of reptiles, 25 endemic invertebrates like butterflies, millipedes, snails, and 37 frog species. Okay, so it gives you an idea of numbers. All right, that for me that's impressive. Yeah. Duncan's looking at me.
No, the numbers are cool. It's impressive. But I think you also something that's saying the more numbers you've got, you think go back to that little Jenga block. The taller that is, the more vulnerable it is. So as nice as that is, it also does mean that we're a lot more vulnerable to change because every single one of those things plays some sort of role. But again, species and numbers, it's not a contest. It's just, there's places in the world with far less biodiversity that are also like really critically important.
I think just to leave things today within the green scene, and how do we work together to try and improve our biodiversity, to try sustain it, our way forward in that?
There's this quote I really like that Baba Diom. He says, in the end, we only conserve what we love. We only love what we understand, and we only understand what we're taught. Nobody recycles and gets into conservation because they've heard our facts and figures. It's because you've had some sort of connection with nature as a child or something. So maybe this weekend, just try, like when you wake up, just close your eyes and listen. Try count the different bird signs around your house.
The small things.
The small things. Go for a walk we've got so many, Kloof Nature Reserve, Kennestanbek, there's all around the mangroves. We've got so many open spaces where you can go for a walk and just just breathe and experience how that makes you feel, being amongst that nature. And I think that's where the change starts, is actually just being part of it. For me, that's where it starts, because you can preach till you're blue in the face until you've experienced it. And when you go, take a walk through that forest and you just pay attention to the different bird sounds, you'll be astounded at what you can count. Or turn over a log and look at the different variety of little critters living there. The different types of butterflies you see. Once you start, and it's around you, and I think our busy day-to-day lives, we don't ever notice it. But if you just stop and slow down and notice it, I think you'll find it quite fascinating and mentally very rejuvenating.
Yeah. Following from that, it's like viewing things with the eyes of a child. When my son was small and he used to get frustrated, I used to take him to Steinbach Nature Reserve. And the idea was we would go hunt for bugs, and we'd take an insect book and we'd identify bugs. And we were just there for an hour, and life would calm down, and we'd get into the beauty of just searching for bugs and trying to understand what purpose does that little bug on the back of that leaf have, And so when we drill down to those little basics and enjoy that, it's like looking at the stars at night. It's like listening to the birds in the morning, that kind of stuff. And wherever you are, we start to reconnect back to the planet in some kind of way.
And you reconnect back to yourself in a way, because that's your natural state. Humans have been living in cities and urban environments for a very short period of time. Our natural state is to be there. And I think once that starts happening, your perceptions and of the world around you, from an environmental perspective and a personal perspective, it actually starts changing. And I think that's where it starts. It's just being aware of what's around you.
Oh, gosh. That is so true, guys. I think it also knocks in, I'm going to always connect this back to why our rural gogos or all is just so in connect with nature and a lot more passive than we are. And they knew everything in spaces, even had names of everything. But unfortunately, time is really against us. So for everyone out there, please can you follow or subscribe to this podcast on our East Coast Radio website and a podcast, or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Through this, you'll be able to get new alerts on our episodes. And if you want to connect with us green people, the crazy green people, please go onto our website at Green Corridors and you'll find all our contact details there online. Charlene, you've been amazing. Duncan, thank you so much for joining. Till the next time, bye-bye, Ini.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
The Green Scene podcast is a partnership between East Coast Radio and Green Corridors. Find out more about Green Corridors via durbangreencorridor.co.za.